Hey there everyone, and a very happy Thursday to you. Today I want to share with you a quick and easy way to get a really fun background effect using embossing powders. And the embossed area that you'll see here is that rectangular shape. I'll hold it up a little bit more closely so that you can see there's the shine on there. You can also probably see that that embossed area is a really fun combination of not only a beautiful sort of slate gray, blue gray, but also there's a lot of gold in here. And that is because this is one of the trios collection that I've done for Wow Embossing, which means that each one of these little pots of color has a couple of different colors mixed in. So as we're working with our sea salt today, this is just a beautiful shade of kind of a denim blue with some gold mixed in there. So it really gives you a pretty variegated background when you're using it as a spotlight for your stamped image. So the rectangular shape that we're getting here, and the reason that this card is so easy to do is because we're able to use our Wow embossing pad, which is rectangular shaped, to simply ink up our background paper and then add the embossing powder on top. Now, the other thing that I've got going on here is a little bit of gold paint spattering, and that's going on also in the stamped image here. And the stamps are, of course, from Paper Artsy, and so are the paints that I'm using. So what I'm going to do is stand up and tilt you down, and we will get into the actual making of our card project. So bear with me as I do the technical part here. Okay, I think you can see my work area. There we go. Move things around a little bit so that we can see. So I'm going to be working with a piece of just plain smooth white cardstock, nice sturdy weight cardstock. And of course I need to have my Wow embossing ink pad on hand, and I also need my embossing powder. So this is the See You at the Beach collection from Wow, and I'm gonna get out the sea salt here. So the other two colors here, we've got Sea Turtle, which is this really pretty green, and then the Sea Mist, which is a beautiful sort of teal color. And we'll be using these all throughout the next coming week, so I'm excited to share those with you. I'm going to just take the cap off of the sea salt because I want to hold this up so that I think you can see in there that there's not only blue, but there's also some dark blue, light blue. There's also the gold in there too. So you've got lots of different combinations within one little jar of powder. Now the other thing I need to have on hand, of course, is my folded piece of scrap paper. This is going to catch my embossing powder, my excess. And then of course I also need to have my heat tool. And the one that I'm using is also from Wow. This one's got two speeds. So you have a regular speed and a fast speed on here too. The one thing that I want to point out about this heat tool, you can see the air vents here around the base of this. It's really important when you're using this tool or any heat embossing tool, not to put your hand over the vents as you are working with this. It doesn't allow that hot air to escape and can cause some problems. So just a little tip to keep in mind as you are embossing. So first thing, what we're gonna do is take our embossing ink pad and do just a really simple direct to paper pressing technique. So I'm just going to place this right here in the middle of my cardstock, and I'm going to press this down. Now, if I press lightly, I will get a light amount of coverage. If I really press down quite firmly, of course, I'll be transferring more ink onto that cardstock. And you can experiment with this and just see what look you like best. So I've pressed that on there. Then I'm going to open up my scrap paper, and I'm just going to add my embossing powder right on top. I think you can see the variation on here. And then when I tap this off, as you can see, I've got my rectangular shape and I've got that beautiful embossing on there. So then what I can do, of course, is just set this aside. I'm going to use my scrap paper to just funnel this all right back into the jar so nothing goes to waste. And make sure that the lid is back on here before I do any heat setting. Now, one other thing that I always recommend people do before they turn on that heat tool, grab a dry brush. A small paintbrush is perfect. This has a kind of a flat bristle. And I always recommend that you just go along the edges and kind of brush off any stray particles of embossing powder. And this goes for backgrounds or stamping detailed images, just to make sure that you've got a nice clean area. This is also important not to handle your cardstock too much before you actually add your embossing ink and powder on there, because our hands have oils in them and the embossing powder can stick to those oils. So what I'm going to do is just heat set this a little bit so that you can see the process. I'm not going to do the whole thing because it will take a really long time. And then I'm going to show you some variations. So hang in there with me for just a second. Okay, so that's the regular speed. And that was the higher speed. Now I didn't emboss the entire thing, but I think you could see as it's melting that this area here becomes raised and shiny, but you can also see the difference between those two areas. So the heat set area and the area that still needs to be heat set. But I wanted to show you when it is all heat set, what it will look like. So I've done two different variations for you. This is where I pressed down that embossing ink pad quite firmly and really made sure that I've got the ink transferred on there so that I've got a lot of coverage with my embossing powder. So as I'm tilting this, you can see the gold highlights in there. Now, if you have a lighter touch when you're applying that embossing ink, then you're going to get something that looks a little bit more like this. So you're still getting that beautiful blue and gold, but it has a lot more of the white cardstock showing through. So neither way is right or wrong. It just depends on the look that you personally happen to like and what you're going for. But I did want to show those both to you so that you get a sense of some of the options that you can go for. So this is a little bit more closely to match to what I did on the original card. So I'm going to show you the second step with this. Now I've got a stamped butterfly and I've also got some gold spattering on here. So I wanted to show you the gold spattering because I think this actually works beautifully with these embossing powders because they do all have a gold element in them. And this is the gold paint, fresco finish chalk acrylic paints from Paper Artsy. And what I do with this is just decant a little bit onto my craft sheet. Get a little bit on here. You don't need too much for this. And then I'm going to add some water. And you guys have seen me do my spattering technique lots and lots of times. But I very rarely do it with a gold metallic. And in this case, I just thought, ooh, this will match perfectly with that embossing powder. So I'm going to mix this up with a little bit of water here. And I always spray a little puddle of water next to my paint so that I can create a mixture in between. And that gives me a little bit more control. So I'm working with my water brush. You could also use a paintbrush. Just depends on what you've got on hand. Hold the brush perpendicular to your piece and then just tap this on. I'm going to add a little bit more here. And I'm not really too concerned about the embossed area. That will create a resist, of course, because the embossing is now a non-porous surface. Okay, and then just tap this on as much or as little as you want. And then you've got some really pretty gold highlights that pick up the gold in that embossing powder. Now, the one other thing I wanted to share with you is the butterfly. So the butterfly has also been painted with some of the watery gold, and that's in that heart area here. And the wings of the butterfly have been painted in with Blue Lagoon. This is also the fresco finish from Paper Artsy. So both the gold and the Blue Lagoon are the two that I used here. And the stamps that I'm working with, I'm using two sets actually, both from Paper Artsy. So the heart with the wings, this is from ESN 32. And then the little sentiment that says, I love you on it, which is this kind of banner going across here. This is from another stamp set. This is from ESN 25. and it's way down here at the bottom. I've got some really tiny sentiments down here with love and I love you. And I just think the two of them work so perfectly together. And that's always the goal for me with my stamps from Paper Artsy, is that they're interchangeable so that you can mix and match and use them from set to set. So they don't ever sort of go out or stand alone by themselves, but you can use them together. So again, another quick look back at our card, that really simple background. Now this can be done with any of your embossing powders, and I just think it's a great way to create a spotlight image for your stamped focal. Now in this case, I've cut out the butterfly with the heart and then popped that up on some foam tape and added a couple of sequins in there too, again carrying that metallic gold theme throughout the design of the card. So quick and easy, and hopefully an inspiring background design for you today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you again next week. Take care.